The concept of Christmas comes from the stories of a virgin birth. Below are 10 stories that are no less bizarre, from the weird science to just plain weird. The stories may be wide and varied, but there are some parameters that were set prior to making this list. You won't find any stories of children born with congenital physical anomalies, although if you want to share some, please do so in the comments. Any record-holding moms or babies had to have survived through the child's infancy. These stories came as I found him, and the only real ordering was dumb to put similar stories next to one another. Washington had twin boys, but her husband is the biological father of only one. Washington had an unusual case of birthing fraternal twins with 2 separate fathers. This story has become more common because of occasional in vitro treatment tales of lab error in which a few eggs were contaminated with the wrong sperm. However, Washington's story unfolds much more naturally. She first became pregnant when having a little fun with either her husband or lover. Very soon afterwards, she met up with the other man and the second egg was released and fertilized. This is a medical rarity known as heteropaternal superfecundation, and only a handful of cases have ever been documented. When the 2 babies were born and one looked nothing like the father, the truth was discovered. Mr. Washington adopted Mia's other son and took the fatherly role for both children. The chances of a mixed-race couple having twins who look as if they are different races are 1,000,000 to 1, but there are occasional stories that pop up about them, like Kyan and Rainey Hodgson, above, and Ryan and Leo Gert. A British couple has become even more of an exception by having 2 sets of twins who look remarkably different. Mia and Leah Dorrant were born in December 2008, and their older sisters Haley and Lauren were born 7 years earlier. Mia has the black hair and dark complexion of her father Dean Dorrant and older sister Haley, while Leah has blue eyes and paler skin just like mom Allison Spooner and older sister Lauren. In 2008, and at the age of 70, Rajo Devi became the oldest woman to give birth. She and her husband had unsuccessfully tried to conceive all throughout their 50 years of marriage and thought it was impossible after she went through menopause in her late 50s. However, after entering a fertility program at an in vitro clinic, Devi was successfully impregnated by a donor egg that was fertilized with the sperm of her 72-year-old husband. On December 6, she gave birth to a baby girl, and both mother and daughter are healthy. Latest reports claim that the happy septuagenarians are attempting IVF again in hopes of having a baby boy. Lina Medina of Peru holds the record as the world's youngest mother when she gave birth to her son on May 14, 1939. Lina was only 5 years old at the time. Her son, Gerardo, spent his childhood believing his grandmother was his mother and his true mother was his older sister. He died at the age of 40 from bone marrow disease, but there was no indication that his unusual birth had anything to do with his problems. Although studies about the pair are hard to find, what is known is that both mother and son were both healthy and suffered no visible effects of such a bizarre birth. Lina married in 1972 and gave birth to her second child that same year, 33 years after Gerardo had been born. To this day, Gerardo's biological father is unknown and Lina refuses to disclose that information. James Elgin Gill was born May 20, 1987 in Ottawa, Canada, and is the world's youngest surviving premature baby. He was born 21 weeks and 5 days into gestation, more than 18 weeks too early. To understand the gravity of the situation, one should know that the survival rates for premature babies born at 22 weeks is less than 10%. Many hospitals will refuse to give medical attention to babies born before the 22-week mark. This baby lucked out by weighing a hefty 1.1 pounds, 482 grams, at birth, which increased his chances of survival. The title for tiniest single baby goes to Amelia Sonia Taylor of Florida, USA, above. She was born at 21 weeks and 6 days but weighed only 10 ounces, 283 grams. Remarkably, the hospitals where both of them were born decided to bring the babies to intensive care, and they are now both healthy and doing fine. The record for birthing the world's heaviest, surviving, newborn belongs to Sig. Carmelina Fedileva Versa, Italy. In September 1955, she gave birth to a baby boy who weighed 22 pounds 8 ounces, 10.2 kilograms, but not much else is known about the boy. Second place belongs to a boy born in September 2009 weighing 19 pounds 3 ounces, 8.7 kilograms. The name of the child wasn't released, but what is known is that he was born to an Indonesian woman with a history of diabetes. Due to insulin problems, diabetic women tend to have larger than average babies. Her 3 previous children were also heavier than average kids, but this little boy was significantly larger. There's an alarming amount of stories to be found of babies born near or even in the toilet, but Lori Calby's daughter has the distinction of being born while mom was on a toilet of an Indian train. Calby was only 7 months pregnant when she rode this particular train, so she hadn't anticipated the outcome of her trip to the bathroom. She felt like she needed to use the toilet, but what actually happened was a precipitous birth, or a quick birth commonly associated with pregnancy complications. Toilets on Indian trains are chutes that empty directly onto the tracks, so after the precipitous birth, Calby's baby fell through the hole and onto the tracks as the train was in motion. After receiving the alert, staff at a nearby station found the baby girl still alive on the tracks. Carolina Chirenza gave birth to her baby Rosita in a tree. In 2000, Chirenza's home in Mozambique was overcome by rapidly moving high floodwaters, so she climbed out the tree to avoid the crocodile-infested waters. For 4 days without food or water, she waited for rescue. Baby Rosita was born on the 4th day, and fortunately, a South African military helicopter rescued them shortly thereafter. There is also a tree birth story from Papua New Guinea. The pregnant Nolan Yeckham and her husband were hung from a tree after being accused of witchcraft. She gave birth mere moments before she and her husband freed themselves from their nooses and went into hiding. Eventually both tree babies and moms were admitted into the hospital and given a good bill of health. Their names are Annette, Cecile, Emily, Maria and Yvonne, but they are better known as the Dion Quints. They are the only recorded set of identical quintuplets and one of the very few sets of naturally conceived high multiples to survive infancy. In May 28, 1934, the Dion Quints were born to the impoverished Elzire and Oliva Dion of Canada. When the Quints were 9 months old, they were taken from their parents and became wards of a estate to live in an estate that became known as Quintland. There, they lived a rigid schedule consisting of either medical testing or structured playtime outdoors in the observatory field where tourists could watch them without interacting with the children. In fact, they had very little contact with people aside from the nurses and house staff. When they were 9 years old, their parents won back custody of the children, but they continued the girls' fishbowl existence with various engagements. photo ops, tourist attractions, etc. to turn a profit from the publicity. The sisters claim they never saw any of the purported millions of dollars made by the government and their parents from this bizarre upbringing. With their privacy severely abused and their childhood traumatized, the Dion Quint severed ties with the rest of their family, and the 3 surviving sisters currently share a modest house and an intensely private life in Montreal. Charles Vance Miller had an ordinary birth and never had children of his own, but he certainly deserves a spot in a list of bizarre birth stories. By the time of his death in 1926, the Canadian lawyer amassed a large fortune but had no one to leave it to. He was a strange fellow whose puckish attitude was reflected in his will. Among his many oddball bequests was that his Jamaican vacation home be given to 3 lawyers who absolutely hated each other. When the last lawyer died, the house would be sold and the money given to Toronto's poor. The will also stated that any unstipulated money was to be given to the mother who gives birth to the highest number of legitimate children within the 10 years after his death. The event became known as the Great Stork Derby, and by the end of the 10-year period, 6 moms split the fortune, $125,000 each to 4 women who gave birth to 9 children apiece, and $12,500 to 2 women, one of whom had 2 stillbirths and the other who had children with someone who was not her husband. The prizes may not seem like much now, but each was a fortune given the depression of the early 30s. Happily, all of the families used their money wisely, with the children's education being the top priority.